Good evening, all. It's Gary Vinci.
Buddy.
Yancy, did you get any sleep yet?
A little bit.
So I guess they fixed the glitch, huh?
I'm not sure if they just did it for that one-time shot. I'm going to keep watching as they update and see what happens.
Interesting times that we live in.
Yeah.
Yancy, this is Greg. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm on the telephone because I've got a freeze condition on the computer that has a video. So if that changes, I will change the way in which I'm at the meeting. But right now, I've got everybody up on a screen and I'm on a telephone.
Okay.
I apologize.
It's all right. Let us know if it fixes itself.
I believe we got everybody, right?
Michael Cohen.
I
Yeah, but
thought
we
you
have a
said
quorum.
Yeah, I thought you said he wasn't coming.
No, the mayor wasn't coming.
Oh, he changed his mind then, because I think at first when he said no.
He said he would have preferred a different date, but he didn't say he couldn't make it.
Okay. Give him, we got a quorum. We give him 2 minutes and then we're gonna go. Just wanna.
Hi everyone, it's Nick Wolochansky. I was just going to point out Dan Marinello from our firm is going to be joining as well. Should be on shortly.
Yeah, he just showed up, Nick.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. Hi, Dan. Hi, Nick.
Hey.
Hi everyone. Good evening.
Okay, good evening. Thanks for coming. Bill, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Greg's on by phone. Mr. Kaufman is on by phone.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Okay. Hi.
Gary, right?
Gary's here.
Yep.
I'm here. Yes.
Okay. I call this special council meeting to order of 11/14/2020 at 6:33 p.m. We'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nancy, will you please do the roll call?
A roll call or the public statement?
The public, well, I was going by your thing. Use that. You got to do the public statement first and then do the roll call.
And just a small thing for the record, you said it's the meeting of November 14th. It's the meeting of November 4th.
November 4th. I stand corrected. November 4th.
Thank you. Okay. This special meeting was called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Law. Notice of this meeting was sent to the record on October 30th, 2020. In addition, a copy of the notice was posted on the website at www.cityofenglewood.org. The purpose of the meeting is to conduct discussions related to the city's debt management plan, building heights, and the hiring of a city planner. A closed session to discuss items permitted under the Open Public Meetings Act, specifically contract negotiations, personnel matters, and matters within the attorney-client privilege will also take place. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act and JSA 10:4-6 at C, in consideration of Executive Order Number 103 issued by Governor Murphy on March 9, 2020, declaring a state of emergency and a public health emergency in the state of New Jersey, the City of Englewood does hereby notify the public that to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens while ensuring the continued functioning of government in the city, the City Council special meeting will be held telephonically and virtually via Zoom only. Members of the public who wish to participate in the meeting may do so by calling or clicking on the link on our website or by dialing 929-205-6099. The meeting ID for this meeting is 857-0076-7379, and the passcode is 522444. Individuals calling into this number will be able to fully participate in the meeting, including providing public comment. Public comments may be submitted by 3 p.m. on the date of the meeting, either through written letter or email at meeting@cityofenglewood.org. All written comments shall be read during the public forum portion of the meeting and shall be subject to the same time limitations for public speaking. Duplicative comments shall be noted for the record and summarized. The agenda for this meeting can be found on the city's website at www.cityofenglewood.org. A separate meeting will be used for closed session portion of this meeting. The council reserves the right to act upon such business, public business as may be brought up for consideration to the extent that consideration of such public business is not known at this time. Formal action may or may not be taken. Proper notice having been given, the municipal clerk is directed to include the statement in the minutes of this meeting.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Cohen still not here. Councilwoman Glenn?
Here.
Councilman Hamer?
Here.
Councilwoman Rosenberg?
Here.
Council President Cobb?
Here.
Also present is City Attorney Bill Bailey and Greg Fehrenbach for Interim City Manager. Mayor Michael Wilds is absent.
Next, we will have a presentation from NW Financial Advisors and the city's auditor, Gary Vinci, regarding the debt management plan. I didn't see Gary on. Nancy, do you know if he's on?
He's here by phone.
He's here by phone? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Gary, thanks. NW, it's your floor.
Okay. Thank you very much, by the way. I appreciate us being here. Nick and I have been working with Gary and Michael and Jewel, for that matter. We've been asked to come, and we had submitted a memo. I hope you all have it, that not only discusses what we've been doing, what our plans have been for the city's debt, but also charts of the outstanding debt that you have, the long-term bonds and notes. When we first started, if you remember, there was real discussion about debt. There was real discussion about how much should we have in notes, how much should we have in bonds. And a lot has happened since then. And I think everything that this memo really is, briefly summarizes is where we were, a few years ago versus where we are today. And I think, from a debt management plan, we've followed the program guidelines that we've all sort of set up for ourselves and have gotten ourselves into a really good place. I say that both from my own opinion about where the city is with regards to its debt, where it is with regards to notes and bonds, but also what you read from the rating agencies. We went out most recently back in March with a short-term note financing, and the S&P report was very strong. It was strong with regards to the city's financials. It was strong with regard to the city's financial management, and it was strong with regard to the city's debt management. We had plans with regards to moving forward. In March of 2021, we are planning on taking advantage of the low interest rates and moving more notes out of notes and into long-term financing. We are at historically lows with regards to interest rates. So our plan at the time for March will be to finance approximately 19 million of notes that are outstanding which notes we choose because those are notes that are starting to require pay downs of principal. So it makes sense that this is when you start to permanently finance those. The city also has a significant bond issue that is coming to its end. So it's going to be freeing up debt service payments in your budget that we can now fill with the long-term financing of note issuances. So our plan is to go out for approximately 19,630,000 in March of 21. If the rates are as good as they are today, we may even be able to finance more of the principal of those notes that are outstanding. But that will be sort of a game time decision. As the memo also talks about, we've been looking at potential refundings. Unfortunately, the outstanding debt of the city is not necessarily in a position to take any real savings at this time. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to balance the cost of issuing refunding bonds versus the cost versus the savings. And that's an ongoing thing that we do, between our firm and Gary, to see what's outstanding, if we can refinance anything. But generally, the memo that we sent around talks about, I think what we've been working on and what we've been working through. And I think it's a plan that we put together when we first was introduced to all of you. I remember those first few meetings. And I think, I feel pretty good that we've been in a good place with regards to the debt. So I'll say it there. You have the memo. Be happy to answer more questions and talk through what you guys have concerns about.
Okay.
I just wanted to add about the net debt, that we're at 1.65%, and the state law is 3.5%. Net debt is the outstanding debt divided by the 3 prior years net valuation. We're at 1.65%, which is more than half than what it's allowed to be. So lower.
So I guess part of the problem, or not, let me take that back. Not part of the problem. Since we have very infrequent meetings with you guys, we need to stay a little bit more in touch. Our concern is that we have a debt. Where is it, about 72 million or something? Is that what you're saying to him? And the goal is to get this down, a lot lower than where it's at, 72, I believe, and others could speak for themselves. It's too high for us, and we need to have a discipline, and it needs to come around our spending and all this other stuff that we need to do. And so, I think one of the things that right out the bat, we need to have more conversation around our debt management plan more often, if it's quarterly or if it's semi-annually, to get us a gauge on what's going on. And that, that's part of our ask that we should be asking you, but you should also be knocking on the door for us too and saying, here's what we're doing, or you may be doing that through Mr. Kaufman, and Mr. Kaufman should be coming to us on this stuff. I think that their town's bigger than us with half the debt that we have, and so we need to get our arms around that. And I think that guidance on spending and certain things would certainly be helpful. We're going to have some infrastructure problems, and we need to be smart in terms of going out and how do we finance it? How do we take care of that? Because we see it coming. And just this year, we've spent a great deal of money, because of our infrastructure is aging, and we don't want to finance everything that we do, and we're going to say, how do we pay it? We need to get good guidance on that stuff to say, okay, before we act, how should we pay for this? How should we think, or the thought of paying it? Obviously, we'll be going through a budget process pretty soon, and we'll be looking for you guys to come in and talk to us in detail and get our thoughts at a budget hearing meeting as well. Because we're looking for from you, and I should say I'm looking for you, is guidance where we can get aggressive at paying some of this stuff down. So we have the opportunity and the flexibility to do other things within and around the city. And that's what the plan should look like to me in terms of that. Now others can speak to what their issues or concerns or what their thoughts are around debt and debt management. But also when we're taking these steps, it just looks good to the rating agencies and understanding that, you know, we have a discipline and an organized approach, and that we're being very thoughtful of what we're doing. So this is why I wanted you guys to come in, and I think others wanted to come in because they had questions. You know, we have a financial advisory committee that also, outside of everybody else, that we have appointed to bring some things to our attention as well. So because we're looking to get as much information as possible to ask the questions, because at the end of the day is to put the city in real good shape financially and have a good discipline and have a good structure and infrastructure in place. So as this city moves forward, it is in a place to provide the services that it can, because we'll have the financial flexibility to do those things. So you can understand where I'm coming from that. So I'll stop talking for a minute or so and let somebody else talk, whether the other council members or whoever has that. And then we just like to get from you, Dan, Nick, and Gary, your feedback on the things that we've said. Who wants to speak next? The floor is open.
I will.
Hey, Charlie. Okay, go ahead.
Gary, I think Gary was about to add something in, but you know, I'll let him do that, and then I have a few comments I'd like to make in question.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. What I was just going to emphasize too is keep in mind too, the rating agencies are an independent body, and I think when you look at the report that Dan referenced earlier, the March report, I mean, they found a lot of positives with the city. You know, the budgetary performance, the liquidity, and I think when you look at the debt management plan that's in the memo, and I kind of agree with you, Charles, when you talked about having periodic meetings. I think that is valuable. I think at the time of the budget, that information would be very important. But what Dan didn't really mention is the fact, yes, we are at unprecedented low interest rates. And I think when you look at the bond issues that you currently are paying back, I mean, Dan and Nick can tell you the interest rates for long-term bonds are under 2%. You're going to find something maybe like 1.5%. So the opportunity to take advantage of the interest rate market, take advantage and improve the infrastructure of the city, I mean, you have a great opportunity right now. And I think, you know, people are obviously in the financial world believing that the bond market will stay at the low interest rates. I understand with the financial plan that's drafted, it does give you flexibility in the future. And I think that's very important, knowing that you have some flexibility within your financial plan. But I do agree that, you know, as you are now entering the 2021 budget cycle, you know, having your capital plan, because obviously you're bonding what you currently are needing, but knowing what your future needs is just as important.
Right.
So I think having all that information and allowing then NW to continue with their management plan, I think that'll be very beneficial to the governing body.
Okay. Sounds good. But that's what I'm saying. This should be a coordinated effort on all of our parts, right, Gary?
I agree.
So this way we understand, you understand, and everybody understands what our wants are and our needs, and we discuss our needs and how do we get there. And put this, and one of the things is just making sure that we put this city on good financial standing. And if it's there already, that's good, but it can always be better, because I believe it's an evolving process, right? And it's a discipline that we should subscribe to, right? Whether whoever's sitting in these seats, they'll have an infrastructure in place that they sit in and they can continue, and they understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And that should be a discipline that we work towards. Councilman Hamer?
Sure. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, Councilman Cobb brought up a few of the things that, are very important to me, and I think most of us. Mainly it revolves around all of the parts of, the financial network being at the table and sort of speaking to. And while we don't necessarily all have to be on the same page, we just need to know what everybody's doing. So one of my concerns, and I'll say it now so we can avoid it for next year, is Dan, you mentioned coming to us in March with refi, whatever your refi plans are. What's more important to me, and while that is important, but what's more important to me is that we have dialogue while that plan is being formulated, as opposed to the CFO and the city manager bringing that plan to us in March and asking us to vote on it, that same at the next meeting, which is kind of not going to happen again. So and I know you guys are our advisors, so you're telling the CFO and the city manager, or working with them to come up with whatever, and Gary to come up with whatever the plan's going to be, and we get to implement it. So I like the implementation part of it, but being part and parcel to the construction of whatever that plan is ultra important to us as well. And I'm saying us, and I'm speaking absolutely for myself, and I'm pretty sure for most of the other council members as well. So one of the things that I like to do, and Michael Kaufman spoke to capacity, I believe, but there was something a little chipped or clipped in staticky when he was speaking, so I didn't quite catch the percentages or ratios that he put out. So I'd like to hear what those are, but at some point, either actually I'll point this to Nick, because I know Nick probably put the plan together. Dan's just a mouthpiece. Nick, I know your friends. I do want you to kind of step us through this memo that you have, and we've all read it, and everyone can probably digest it, line by line, and quote it back to you. But I just want you to step us through it so that we talk through what you put on paper, and I think that would be instructive as well.
Okay.
So I'm really glad that you guys are here, because I really do want to reemphasize the fact that we and rates are incredibly good right now, but we absolutely have much more debt than we need to, particularly because we've got some real pressing infrastructure needs. And as Councilman Cobb said, just because we have some capacity to add on more, we need to trim what we have so that we can organically take on the things that we need to, and to the degree possible, either keep on level footing with the debt that we do have, or find ways to take on things and defease some of this debt that we have, or do something with the short-term stuff as well. So we've got to get creative, and want you guys to earn your money really well, and come up with the best ways that we can trim some of the fat off of what we have, and still take care of the things that we need to take. Because not all debt is bad debt. There's some really good things that that we do that we'll need to do, particularly related to infrastructure, and that's where you guys come in. So those are my comments. Apart from Michael, if you don't mind repeating whatever those ratios were you said when you made your comment.
Sure. 1.657%. That's our net debt.
1.657.
And the state law is it can't be over 3.5% for municipalities. So we're way under.
So just before I stop, one thing I'd like to get from you guys, and you could, if you would, send it through the city manager or through the city manager, is a contrast, where we rank, with these debt ratios relative to,
to other towns.
Other towns in Bergen and across the state.
Okay.
Okay. I should have directed that to you too, Nick. You'll be doing the work. So thank you.
Yes, we'll certainly get that data for you.
And that's no big on you, Dan. I just know who does the work here. So
Nick, by the way, Nick does all the work, but I will tell you, with regards to you mentioned a couple of things there before Nick goes through this process. When it comes to the percentage of net debt as a percentage of your equalized valuation, 1.65 is what I would refer to as middle to one of the better ratios you could have when it comes to that number. Most of the municipalities that we see that you might say have issues with their debt, you're much closer to 2.9 to almost to that 3.5% limit. So I think just that Nick will get you all the information so you can see where you play itself out. And when you look at that and you compare that to things like your effective tax rate, right, which is at about 2.3%, 2.3, that's about almost, I think in Bergen County, you're almost exactly at the median level of effective tax rate. So you're comparing all these different things when you're looking at financials. I say that only because I do feel strongly, and Nick will go through the numbers, that whatever Englewood is dealing with regards to its budget, its appropriations, taxes, and all those things, I feel pretty good that on the debt side of the ledger, you have done great things from when I first started here, where you thought that and debt was more of an issue. We had the one cash influx from a sale of property that was used to help pay down some of your notes. We permanently financed things as we've gone on, such that we weren't really facing any significant increases in your debt service that would cause problems with your budgetary and your tax rate. So I think just generally speaking, having been in this business for a long time, I think, if there are issues that Englewood is dealing with financially, the debt part of it is not only not an issue in my opinion, but when you read and you look at S&P and the things that they say, I think they feel that Englewood is in a very strong position to the point where, back in March, we were at a AA negative, I think, but with a positive outlook, which meant that they were ready to take that negative off and even look at an upgrade. And the only reason that really hasn't happened is because once the pandemic hit, S&P knocked that off of everybody. It gave a negative to every municipality.
Right.
I say that, and I'll let Nick go through it to your point, Councilman, but I did want to just give you sort of my thoughts on where Englewood sits when it comes to its financial picture and its debt picture.
Dan, since you brought up something, I'm going to go down that road. So we were double, would you say double A?
Double A minus.
Right. So what would it take for us to get to AAA? The gold standard. Why can't we?
The biggest issue, it's not that you can't. You can. One of the biggest issues that's stopping you from getting to that point, one of them is what we call fund balance. Fund balance, when you guys, you've been at a much higher level of fund balance to where you were, I forget the dollars. Nick will tell you if he'll know for sure. But your fund balance has come down. You've paid off debt with cash, which is a good thing, but the alternative would have been to not pay off debt and add it to fund balance, right? So that you had surplus at the end of each year. And your goal is to really try and build that surplus up as much as you can. And you can do that in various ways. But I think what's one of the reasons that's stopping you from the AAA is you once had a very high fund balance, and now your fund balance is much lower. And we have to work to try and get that up. It's not bad, it's just not AAA level fund balance.
So you're saying most municipalities that have that are AAA rating have a very good fund balance. That's what you're saying to me.
Correct.
And so we need to work towards that.
That's absolutely one of the things that should be on the goal of getting to a AAA rating is to create fund balance, which you do, by working to offset you have a budgetary appropriations, but if you don't spend all of that, right, it'll trickle down to your fund balance. It's no different than your own management of your own funds, right? You make X and you spend Y. If it's less, then you add to your fund balance, and that's what we need to work to do.
Right.
And I've been I give a spreadsheet to the council every year during budget. We've been doing that every year, and we're creating reserves. We're getting more money in reserves, which is similar to them. Surplus and reserves are the same thing. So our reserves are going up. So these are things that it doesn't take 1 year to do that. It takes years and years to build a surplus up. But every year it's hopefully going up a little more. Now with Corona, I don't know this year, but every year recently it's been going.
So Mr. Kaufman, it's incumbent upon you to, when you're having a conversation and you visit with us, that you remind us as well as if we want to be AAA, these are the things that we need to be doing, and you need to help us focus on those things so that's where we want to go. I can speak for myself. I'll let all the other council members, they can speak for themselves as well. But I'm sure that they would want us to be AAA because that's the gold standard. I mean, I think people are working hard, and that shows our community, that shows the financial folks when we got to go make a move financially. What is our standards? What is our rating? That would help us out, along with having open gov, Mr. Kaufman, something we can monitor our stuff with as well. That would help us and pay our attention as well, something like that. So we have KPIs and things of that nature that we can kind of monitor on an ongoing basis, along with the report that you send to us. So we have more tools to work on these things.
Yeah, if I might, I'm sorry. I don't want.
Sure, Nick, go ahead.
No,
Nick, hold on 1 second. Hold on before you get started. I want to ask any other council members have anything to say before Nick dives into it. No, sure.
Question.
Councilman Cohen? Nothing. Councilwoman Glenn?
Yes, I have a question.
Yep.
I just wondered, in terms of the pandemic and the conversation we're having about surplus, are there any recommendations or best practices that you're seeing come across for communities to kind of shore up their savings in case there are tax shortfalls or, dire circumstances? I just wondered if there's any kind of, I don't know, any advice that you would share with us based on your experience.
I could answer some of that. One of the things the state, usually with each budget, you can only use previous year's revenue as a barometer of what you can use for
Mr. Kaufman, you Mike, can you start again with that? Because you started breaking up, at least to me. Yeah.
Sorry. What's normally for the budget, what the state allows you to do is use the previous year's revenue as a barometer of what you could use for the current year's budget. But the coronavirus, the state lets you use the average of the previous 3 years this year, and for next year. So that's one thing that's going to help the budget. Another thing is canceling current year appropriations that we don't spend. So let's say we have appropriations in recreation that we didn't spend. We, instead of waiting for next year, we could cancel it this year and put surplus. Hopefully on the next, for the one of the council meetings coming up, we'll be creating a reserve for stormwater trust. That's another thing. But we're going to take extra money that we have there and putting it into that. So there's different things that we could do to minimize the impact. But there's some things that, revenues are short. Can't do anything about it. Anyone else wants to say more?
Yeah, let me just add to what Michael's saying. So there will be revenue shortfalls this year in a couple areas. Your budget is built on revenues from the parking garage, from the parking meters. So obviously the impact of the pandemic is severe in those areas. So there will be revenue shortfalls, but what Michael is saying is that even though you may see a shortfall of, say, $800,000 in revenues, some of the recreation appropriations, which you budget in 20, will not go to surplus typically until the end of 21. You can act on that this year by council resolution, and that will bring it into surplus at the end of 20, which would then reduce that revenue shortfall. In addition, the budget from 19, whatever is unspent, lapses to surplus. So you have probably double the amount of unexpended balances of the 19 budget than in comparison to the 18 budget. So those items should offset. But what Michael was saying, and I think it goes back to what Dan was mentioning before about fund balance, what's important is not necessarily just your operating fund balance. It's also how much money entities put in reserves. Reserve, for example, tax appeals. You have a reserve of, say, $390,000. Obviously, the exposure needs to be compared whether that is enough money. A few years ago, you ran into situations with the retirement of individuals employed by the city, and you actually had over $1 million of liabilities that needed to be paid out. Unfortunately, there was no reserves prior to that year. So from that point, the city has been able to put money into a reserve, and I think continuing to fund that reserve is very important, as well as what Michael talked about. You can create a storm recovery reserve. And Michael and I were talking about that. The council needs to act on that by resolution, but what that does, it gives you money for any unforeseen storms that impact the area, whether it's FEMA related, whether it's a blizzard, whether it's COVID related. But again, you're putting money aside that provides additional resources for future years. And that's really part of what Dan was mentioning by the rating agencies, looking at your reserves, looking at your surplus. So at the end of 19, you had 5.7 million. But if we went back 2 years before that, you had in the 3 millions. And I think those 3 years of, I think it was 18, 17, 16, or 17, 16, 15, or 3 million in surplus for a size of the city. From the rating agency, they look at it as a low level.
Right.
And I think building that up, building up the reserves, allows you then to be considered for an upgrade, as well as other factors that they weigh with their evaluation of the city.
So some of these things that obviously, Gary, that you just mentioned, and Mr. Kaufman, if we're going to put something, if we haven't asked for you to put something together where these opportunities lie in our budget, a document that you could submit to the governing body, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
You know, I mean, because we're getting a lot of good information here, and I want to make sure things that we can take advantage of, we should, especially so because we're getting to the end of the year. We got some members that are moving on to do other things, and we want them to be a part of acting on this and putting this structure together before they move on. So I want them to participate in these things. So whatever we need to do and what we need to act on, I want to make sure that everybody's on board and that we take these documents, we understand them, and what the impact's going to be. So, Mr. Coffin, I look for you to give us something in the short future here, in the near future, if I stand corrected. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So we need that. All right. Nick, I'm sorry about that. I just
no problem at all.
Stress those things before I forget them. You know.
No problem.
And Yancy, were you waving or something? Oh, okay. So I think we can move forward. I don't think anybody has any questions right now, Nick. I think we should move forward and let you do your thing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Glenn, you were done, right? Okay, she's done. Catherine was done. Okay. And nobody else had any questions, I believe. Okay. All right. Nick, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So I guess when we were first appointed in 2018 as the city's municipal advisor, you know, we analyzed the city's debt picture at its point in time. There was a large amount of short-term notes outstanding, which, if you recall, you told us you'd like to reduce that amount gradually because, you know, you believed it was getting to an excessive level. Analyzing that picture, we looked for opportunities within the city's debt service picture, you know, on an annual basis to permanently finance, which is to, you know, convert amounts of the portions of the city's short-term debt into long-term bonds, which, you know, drastically, it locks you into a fixed rate going forward and reduces the city's exposure to fluctuations in interest rates on an annual basis from, you know, the short-term debt that has to be rolled over every year at a different rate. And at the time, we identified this was in 2018, we identified in 2019 the opportunity from the maturity of a 2014 financing of the city coming off the city's debt service. So at that time, we permanently financed about 13 million in notes, I believe, and we planned as well to issue notes in addition to that to fund the city's capital needs at the time, while also locking into rates long term. And another opportunity that we identified was in 2021, the city has a deal from 2005 that was issued through the Bergen County Improvement Authority, which the city budgets about $2,210,000 annually in debt service that will be finally maturing. The total decrease is about 2.1 million coming off the books in 2020 from 21 to 22. So we identified that opportunity for the city to again permanently finance about 19,630,000 in notes at that time, with the opportunity to permanently finance more if rates continue to be at this low level. But that will seamlessly fit into the debt service and avoid having to increase the budgeted debt service of the city. So we believe that's a great time to lock into these historically low rates and get that fixed low rate going forward for the city annually. There will also be, you know, an opportunity for the city to issue additional notes to address capital needs if they're, you know, as they arise. You know, as we approach March, we're going to be working with the city manager and the CFO and all of you to, you know, determine the capital needs of the city at that time. We could look into issuing more notes if necessary. And that's the plan. And when we spoke with S&P, we also relayed that plan to them, and it was received very well by them. In fact, you know, just to add on to what Dan was saying, with the S&P in March of this year, you know, we indicated that we had a plan going forward to permanently finance, you know, in this coming year in March 2021, and the city actually S&P actually analyzed the city's debt picture in March of this year and assigned that positive outlook, which a positive outlook from S&P indicates that there's a good chance, usually about a 1 in 3 chance, as they put it, that they will raise the city's rating within the 2-year outlook period. And they specifically cited in the report that the positive outlook was based on the city's improved finances and a commitment by management to maintain balanced financial operations and strong reserves. That was also supported by, a more formalized 5-year financial projections that the city also prepared. So S&P was, definitely thinks the city is going in the right direction with, in terms of its, financial picture and the management of its debt. And, we think this plan going forward will help keep the city's debt service level and lock into historically low rates. And it's a great time for the city to have to have the opportunity to permanently finance that debt. And we think it's going to put the city in a good place going forward, in terms of addressing additional capital needs that they'll have going forward as well.
Mr. Hamer, you look like you want to say something.
No, I was just in my defensive listening position.
Oh, okay. So Nick, if we look out 5 years, and I think Gary always know we talk about 5 years in spending and what we pay down, I think it would be helpful, as we walk through it. One of the most helpful things in the near future is we have a new city manager starting. She'll be joining us on December the 14th. And I think we need to convene a meeting with you guys. And to Mr. Hamer's point, if you guys are considering in March of 2021 to make some adjustments or moves or whatever you want to call them, that not the night of the council meeting, maybe a month, 4 weeks in advance at a workshop meeting, we can have the conversations and your thoughts and things of that nature. So that way we understand, and then we understand what we're voting on, or whether we agree to vote on it at all, whatever action we agree to take or not to take, we know in advance, and we've had time to get the information from you, digest it, and understand it before we act on it. That's what we want. I asked you, I asked Gary, I asked Mr. Kaufman, I asked everybody that we want to get the information in advance before we have to act on it. That's, so if we got questions for you, we're able to do that. We don't want to get the information the same night and then have to act on it that night as well. It just doesn't, it's not a good thing to do, because we want to understand what we're doing and ask the questions. We want to have an opportunity to do that.
Certainly. We'll, we will definitely make it our prerogative to meet with the city manager and relay everything.
Well, we're going to make sure that happens.
Yes.
We're going to make sure it happens. And the other ask that I have personally is that, obviously you, Gary, Mr. Kaufman have a working relationship. I want the working relationship to be with we have a financial advisory board that, that we appointed by all the members of the council, that they're involved as well. And that's just simply because we want them to be involved, but the professionals will guide us, will give us the information. You guys will, but we just want that. We want to get as much data and data points as possible to make the best decisions as possible. But we're banking on the professionals to do that with us. But we just want to make sure that we get everybody that should be involved and have a good working relationship with these things. And so that we can provide the best, put the city in the best financial position as possible. That's what we do. We'll be coming and going, none of us will stay here forever. It's not eternity, but the city will be here. So it needs to just have an infrastructure that we can be proud that we put together. And I'd like to do that, concrete and nail some things together before the ladies step off of the council, so they can be a part of that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Hamer, you still in a defensive position, or you want to go on offense, or anybody else want to go on offense?
I'm ready for offense now.
Oh.
So Nick, you did point out a couple of things that we pushed forward as you guys were coming in. Changing the composition of the debt that we have, and rates at that time, were conducive to having a bigger slice of short-term debt. Those bands that we carried at that point were, it was crazy not to. So just like now, we're in a position where long-term rates are incredibly good. It's crazy not to try to shift, some of our obligations, go along with the debt that we have, because locking in that rate saves us interest payments over time. But we don't know how long interest rates are going to stay low. It would be great that they rode this way, into 2021. But, with the pandemic and the economy going, whichever way it's going to go, because no one seems to be able to control it right now. We're lucky if we can get to March and lock in, some of the debt that we have for a longer period of time. But I'm glad that, we're having this conversation, because it's also important for us to all of us get our arms around, where we're going, and, to the extent possible, be on the same page. And again, I'm going to say, we don't all have to agree, but what we're not going to do is, at the very last minute, make decisions, we're either, backed up into, and I'm not going to say that, we were finessed into, that certainly can't happen. So, I just want to say that again. But anyway, thank you for this.
Thank you.
I'm done. Thanks. Council President, you're on mute.
Yeah, I know. Phone was going crazy. Probably somebody in the audience calling me. Does anybody else have any questions for Nick or Dan? No?
The only question I guess I would have, Council President, is why do you guys stick Councilman Cohen in his closet? Can he come? Can we get him an office or something over there?
I think you got to ask him that. I think he's in the position. You got to ask him that.
When you got 6 kids in the house, you got to find any hole you can get to.
Very nice.
So
I'm happy to send the kids over, Dad, if you want.
I love that.
So Dan and Nick, I appreciate you guys coming in to talk to us about this stuff. So as I said earlier, I think that once the new city manager starts, that it's, in all fairness to her, that we bring you guys in and you guys paint the picture for her, so she's comfortable with it as well, or whatever questions or concerns she may have, she can raise them with you, because you'll be dealing directly with her and Mr. Kaufman. And just keep in mind, as we said, the one ask is that, if you got some things that you want to implement or changes or whatever that we know, we want to have it in advance. We don't want to do it the same night, because we don't digest well like that. And the one thing is, I have one final question: is the balancing of the spending and over the years. That's where we want to get the balancing of the spending versus paying down the debt. Because if I think you were saying you were paying, we were paying now every year 2.2. Is that what it was?
Well, that was just in relation to one bond issue that was coming off the books because it was maturing. In terms of the long-term bonds altogether, there is and I included a brief summary in the Exhibit B of the memo So there, right now, the city is going to be paying in 2020 about 6.2 million in long-term debt service, and it's going to 6.4 in 21, but then in 22 it drops to 4.3 with the maturity of that bond issue. So that's where the opportunity lies to permanently finance.
Right, in between that spread, right, yeah. So we just make sure we take advantage of that, and we lay that plan out every year. If we can do that, if we can, gentlemen, if we can put something together every year that we put in the file that these are some of the things we want to do as we go through the planning in the budget phase, to say, this is what we agreed to over that. And if you, Nick, if you laid that out, we should lay that out in a spreadsheet or something for, a 5-year term, as opposed to, I know you put it in a memo, but if we do that, we, and just continue to work with Mr. Kaufman on that to make sure that we are adhering or following those proposed recommendations, I think we'll be in a good place.
Absolutely.
Okay. No more, if there's no more questions, Mr. Kaufman, you got a few things you need to get to us, right?
You mean for the next count? Talking about for what? Or other for this?
There's some things around the budget that we need to be, we need to get in a memo to us so we know what we need to act on and what we need to be taking, advantage of, because there are opportunities, as Gary spoke to, the stormwater.
Yeah,
can you put something together for us and send it out to the members? So and understand that we have a workshop meeting on Tuesday. So if possible, can we have that? Because we have 2 meetings in November and 1 in December. So time is short.
Okay.
Yancy, were you waving at?
Yeah, two in December as well.
We have 2 in December now? Okay. But we need to make sure it's not much. Whatever it is, it's not much. Right? So whatever opportunities we can take advantage of. And Gary, I mean, you can weigh in on that memo with Mr. Kaufman if you choose to, because I know you spoke to some things where we could take advantage of, where you could be canceling. We can have a resolution. If you said you can cancel some things that we didn't spend. So whatever opportunities that things that we can take advantage of for this year, let us do that as we close out the year.
Okay, I'll definitely work with Michael on that. Okay,
and so if possible, we want to have that. I would like to have that for the workshop on Tuesday. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for coming in. Dan, Nick,
of course,
Gary,
no problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Nick, we're going to stay in touch now. We expect to, we'll probably try to do something, and Dan probably quarterly to help us along a little bit.
Councilman Hamer already said you don't need me, you just need Nick. So,
well, that's between you and him on that. That's between you and him. However you want to do it,
no problem.
I give you.
Sounds good.
I give you an invitation. No way. If he doesn't give it to you, I give it to you. Come see us, please. We want to make sure that we get this right. That's our obligation. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming out tonight to bring us up to speed on that, and the goal is AAA.
Anytime. Listen,
help us to get there.
You got it.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night. All right. Thank you.
Do you want me to stay on or also or whatever?
I believe you can go. We don't have anything. I don't think we have anything for you, Mr. Kaufman.
Okay. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next 2 items, I guess, items for discussion. Building heights and setbacks. Mr. Bailey, you want to start that discussion?
Yeah, if I could, Council President. To follow up our discussion last week, we talked about kind of doing a deep dive and comprehensive review of zoning issues throughout the city, including the building heights and setbacks, Liberty School, banners, altering, permitted uses in various places within the city to, get a good plan, yet also to the extent we could help along retail establishments and vacancies that have popped up throughout the city given recent events. Stan Slahetka of P&M is prepared to join us in closed session so that the council as a whole can ask him questions and talk about kind of the scope of his services and whether to retain him on a more formal basis. You're all familiar with Stan, and we do hire him on a case-by-case basis, but I think to follow up our discussion, it might be important to enlist someone like him with his expertise to do some of these more comprehensive zoning analysis and help address these planning issues, whether it's an RFP for Liberty School or possible uses being changed throughout the city, or bulk requirement criteria such as building heights and setbacks. So since it really is a discussion about appointing Stan and compensation and things like that, that's typically done in closed session so that there can be an open discussion about compensation and the scope of services and appointments. If you decide to go in that direction, whatever those parameters would be, that would then be on a formal meeting for a resolution, whether it's next week or the following meeting.
So what you're saying to me is we could go on, when we go into closed session, we could talk about that.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So this whole agenda item is moving to closed session, or just the hiring of?
No, not the whole. Yeah, we can talk about certain things, but we can't talk about the the hiring and all that.
Right, but we're still, but fine. But
Right,
for
so-
zoning conversations.
No, you're right. So we need to talk about the setbacks and all that kind of stuff for public, which Mr. Bailey, we wanted to talk about the work that you've done, just looking at the setbacks and trying to bring us up to speed on that. And because the issue here is that we believe the buildings are too high in the downtown area, right? And we'd want to bring them back to I guess what was it, 48 feet instead of the 60 feet that it is?
Yeah, it's a 60 feet in that one district with a 35-foot setback.
Right.
Back to 48, but these conversations kind of relate to each other because we need a planner to help with doing that, because like we discussed the last time, there's whether there should be a reexamination of the land use throughout the city, which involves the planning board, and that absolutely involves the use of a planner on our end as well to determine that. There's also, we have redevelopment areas where there's other mechanisms to do the height adjustments or use adjustments. For example, Palisades Court, that's a redevelopment area. That's actually a slightly different process. I know that's not necessarily about height and setbacks, but more about uses. That requires amending the redevelopment agreement that the city currently has for many years with Palisades Court, the owners of that. In some respects, that's an easier process because it's not involving a reexamination of the master plan and things along those natures. So, but we kind of need the help of a planner to assist with the development, because we talked about Palisade Ave, but other council people also mentioned looking throughout the city in terms of setbacks and height limitations and things like that, which that's a much more comprehensive issue. And again, that starts to go hand in hand with the reexamination of the master plan.
Right. So what you're saying to us is that you believe Stan could assist you with doing this and conducting this effort and coming back to us. And what we need to do is, one, agree or consider Stan to be our planner. And Stan's history is he has been our planner before in the past on certain items.
Correct.
And so the council just needs to know if they're okay. I mean, everybody needs to be okay with Stan functioning in that capacity for us. And he has already done that in the past on projects before, right? Mr. Bailey, if I'm correct, if you tell me that.
like for example, he did the redevelopment study for Liberty School. But we haven't had since Ken Albert retired. Ken Albert was a planner as well. So he was someone that the city, whether it's me or the city manager or elected officials, could call him right away in his capacity, not only as an engineer, but as a planner, and say, hey, can you help us put this together or that together? We have a little bit of a void right now. And we do hire T&M on a case-by-case basis, but this would be a more formalized relationship, for lack of a better word, which would enable us to get more input from a professional planner to assist with that stuff, because a lot of that's really a planning function.
Okay. So I guess it would be helpful for those who are not familiar with Stan, or all of us, is to get some background on some of the things that he's done and his background, so that, we can look to work on this at the next meeting. And if somebody else has other planners that they believe that are qualified or whatever, we can put them on the docket as well. And then, we can work on it at the next workshop meeting. But Stan is somebody who's familiar with Englewood, who's worked with Franz, who's worked with you, if I understand that right.
Correct. And really, as a courtesy, Stan has taken a lot of my phone calls and things like that, even though they weren't necessarily within the scope of the projects he's been retained to do. So right. That's why we have him lined up for closed session. So while me and Franz deal with him a lot, to let the governing body, and you've met Stan before, but to really speak to him directly in terms of engaging him for other projects and things that the city's considering doing. Right. So he's teed up for closed session, sort of like an interview, if you will, that you guys can interview him. I've given him a summary of the issues that we've been talking about. So he's been thinking about them. Not that there's any, he hasn't done any deep planning analysis, but he is familiar with the issues.
I guess we can talk to him in closed session, and everybody can ask him questions, and whatever concerns we have with this, or however approach we want to proceed on that. And Mr. Bailey could provide us with guidance on that. Doesn't mean we have to take them, but
no, and like you said, you can interview other planners.
Right. We can do whatever, but this would be another thing to get started. Why we have only a limited amount of meetings left, so we could be pushing this in the right direction. I know the zoning is something that a lot of the business owners downtown, or property owners, are looking forward to addressing. So this would be some good news to them as we are focusing our resources on those things. So.
Right.
Anybody have any questions? Ms. Rosenberg, Ms. Glenn, Mr. Cohen, Mr. Hamer?
I have a comment.
Okay.
So yes, I'm glad we're having this conversation with Mr. Slaheka, and we also need to give some real thought to ways to navigate through Englewood. We've got a huge property coming online, and it's going to further diminish the ability to get through the west side of town. So we probably need to at least hear what the options are for and the safe ways to navigate through, because our emergency services need to get to and through town. Residents and shoppers need to be able to come the best way through town or into downtown. So we've got to look at how, or at least I hope we give some real consideration to how people travel through downtown, and maybe look at some of the bus stops that we have. That requires New Jersey Transit, and they'll have to weigh in and approve some of this stuff in the county because of the county roads. But we really do need to look at how we move around Englewood. So that, coupled with the issues of of use all around town, the business district, and what's allowed and isn't allowed, and we know that's going to have to be done in conjunction with the planning board, but it still needs to come to us for a final decision. So we absolutely need to engage a planner, whether it's Stan or someone else, but engage a planner and start thinking about where things are going to be in 5, 10, and 20 years, and start planning now. So
yeah, I think it's an opportunity for us, whoever we hire, whatever planner, to really do some thoughtful thinking about how we want this community to look and start to work on it, and things that we have via traffic or via, traffic is going to be a big thing, because that building down there at 40 Bennett Road, when it came in front of the planning board and they approved it, the traffic study guy said it would have no impact. And I said, it's impossible. We already have a problem there. So, I mean, we got to think about, we got to really be thoughtful and use somebody to give us some guidance who's used to dealing with things like that. So I think this is an opportunity for us, so we can, start to look at some things here in Englewood. Mr. Belli, the other thing is you talked about banners a little bit, and I know it seems like we've been stuck on this thing with the banners. It kind of it's creating, like we're in mud or something. What's going on with that?
Well, quite frankly, and as we talked about last week, is you see these banners in other towns, and I've done a search of other municipalities. They basically have the same ordinances we do that restrict them to only temporary banners and in conjunction with the opening of businesses. And I expect some of our fellow municipalities throughout the state don't necessarily enforce their own ordinance. Let me put it that way.
Right.
Because I've looked at other nearby towns and they all have the same thing. So that needs to be amended. And for example, I've spoken to Stan about that, and he's done them in other municipalities. And that's in conjunction with what Mr. Councilman Hammer just said. That's just another avenue where his expertise or some other planner's expertise can be a big assistance, because what you're going to get into then is, once you let one entity fly a banner, it's hard to say no to any others. So is it only for not-for-profits? Is it non-commercial speech only? Those type of things all need to be considered, because you will have other entities or businesses that are going to want to fly banners as well.
Can we do it by? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sure.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think we have to be careful about saying, is it only for not-for-profits, especially given that we are in theory arguing that the hospital is not a not-for-profit.
Correct.
So.
That's
Correct.
right.
Yep. Yeah, I was only just using that just as a general example.
Can we, with these banners, can we do it through the way of issuing it by permit? Can we do it via the permit so we control what goes on?
Correct, but the ordinance would have to be amended. So there are provisions in place right now. So if you're opening a new business and the utility company, you get their consent, you can hang a banner, and there's size restrictions and things like that. But that's only a temporary banner. It can't be up permanently. I think it's, like up to 90 days.
Oh, is that one?
My understanding is people that have approached the city about this want it up permanently. So that's where we're running into the problem, because that doesn't jive with our ordinance.
Who defines temporary? Do we define it, or is there some state statute that defines it?
The city does. It's in the ordinance, okay. And I think it says 90 days.
So we could change that. For example, if we said, a year, you could have, or we can do it based on the ask, right? And then that's how we could control these banners.
But you have to have some parameters. So,
like we can't control what they say. Like we can't accept the messages we like and reject the messages we don't like.
Correct. It has to be content neutral.
And you can't say that, because of this message is 30 days, but that message we can do a year. I mean, it's got to be metrics by which,
Right. If you give a year for one, you got to give a year for everyone.
It's got to be clearly defined.
And right now it's in conjunction with the opening of a business, for example.
And it's 90 days.
You can take that out if you want. But again, those are things that have to.
No, I'm just asking how we can do this thing.
Like I said, I think that's frankly why some municipalities, people just put them up and they might not necessarily comply with their actual ordinances.
Well, we got enough non-compliance around here. We don't need any more.
Right. Yeah, we're just trying to do it the proper way, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, we want to do it the right way because we, that and lack of enforcement just creates a whole nother topic that.
It sounds like it's the exact same issue as with the murals.
Yeah.
Basically, like if we allow one,
Yep.
we're gonna open ourselves up to allowing everything, and
Yep.
that's not necessarily what we want.
Yep.
Right. And again, that's why someone with a planner's expertise can help us navigate that.
Right. Right. Okay. Fair enough. I think we've covered these topics. Nancy, I believe we could open this up to the public. Right?
Yes, if you'd like, at the time.
It's at that time. 2 minutes, name, address. Bill, what time did you tell Stan for?
We had told him tentatively 7, but I told him I will text him when we're ready, so he's not standby.
Okay. Sorry, Nancy. Sorry.
So did you want to read the statement or the public?
No, you want to read this? I don't have the statement in front of me.
Oh, you don't have the
No.
agenda procedure?
No. But they have, you have 2 minutes, name, address, and as I always say, we're gonna conduct ourselves in a way that's being respectful to all members in terms of the conversation. So, Nancy, please.
So same as always, if anyone wishes to speak, please at the bottom of the screen, there's a more button, click on that and raise your hand. You will be called upon. You'll go in queue. There are 2 members of the public present. Would either of you like to speak?
No?
I'm not seeing a raised hand, no.
Okay, we'll close the public session out. Mr. Bailey, take us into closed session, please.
Yep. Be resolved by the governing body of the city of Englewood that it go in closed session to discuss appointments, potential litigation and matters within the attorney-client privilege, and be further resolved that the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public upon taking final action thereon, provided it does not constitute an undue invasion of privacy or violate the attorney-client privilege. And be it further resolved that while the council will return to open session to adjourn the meeting, it does not anticipate that it will take any formal action at that time.
And Nancy, we're going to leave this meeting, and we got an email from you today.
Yes, the one I sent you today.
Today for the closed session, folks. And we got, I guess we got one topic, and that's it, right?
Yeah. So we just need the vote on the resolution.
A vote on.
A motion and second first.
Yeah.
Motion and a second. I'll second it.
And all in favor?
All in favor? Aye. Okay, let's see you in closed session.
See you on the other side.
See you on the other side. Thank you.